My sister snorted, her voice carrying across the crowded backyard. "Why don't you cover that ugly scar, Amber? No one wants to see that while they're trying to eat." Honestly, she just loves the attention. The entire family BBQ went silent. I looked down at the jagged, thick line running from my shoulder to my elbow, memories of fire and screaming rushing back in an instant. I said nothing, swallowing the lump in my throat. I was used to her cruelty. But then her new husband, a highly decorated Navy SEAL who had been quiet all afternoon, turned around. He caught sight of my exposed arm, and the beer bottle in his hand shattered on the concrete patio. He froze, his face turning pale as death. He stared at my scar, then looked up at my eyes, his voice trembling. "Operation Iron Storm, it's you. You're Black Eagle of the U.S. Air Force. My name is Amber, and I am 29 years old. For as long as I can remember, I've been the invisible ghost in my own family, completely overshadowed by my older sister Vanessa. To my parents, Vanessa was the golden child who could do no wrong, while I was just the quiet sibling who drifted into the background. When I joined the military right after high school, my family barely noticed. While I was deployed overseas, Vanessa was climbing the corporate ladder and dating high-profile men. Whenever I called home, my mother would quickly cut me off to talk about Vanessa's latest promotion or her expensive shopping trips. They genuinely believed I held a boring, low-level desk job in the military, a data entry clerk shuffling papers in some safe, forgotten office. I never corrected them. The things I saw, the losses I endured, and the missions I flew weren't meant for casual dinner conversation anyway. So, I let them look down on me. I let them think I was unsuccessful. Now, I was back home, sitting in the corner of my parents' backyard for a massive family barbecue. Today was supposed to be a historic day for our family. Vanessa had recently married Marcus, a highly decorated elite Navy SEAL, and this party was his grand welcome into the inner circle. Vanessa was ecstatic, practically glowing as she prepared to parade her new husband in front of everyone. But as I sat there in the sweltering summer heat, I had no idea that my quiet secrets were about to collide with her loud reality. The midday sun beat down mercilessly on the patio, pushing the temperature past 90 degrees. The backyard was filled with the clinking of glasses, the sizzle of burgers on the grill, and Vanessa's loud, theatrical laughter. She was in her absolute element, practically floating from group to group, making sure every aunt, uncle, and cousin knew exactly how heroic her new husband was. Marcus stood by the grill, quietly nursing a beer, looking polite but slightly detached from the overwhelming spectacle. Unable to handle the stifling humidity in my heavy, long-sleeved shirt any longer, I stepped into the house and changed into a simple, sleeveless tank top. I knew what it meant. It meant exposing the thick, jagged, violent line of scar tissue that ran all the way from my shoulder down to my elbow, a permanent souvenir from a night I tried hard to forget. The moment I stepped back outside into the shade of the awning, Vanessa's eyes locked onto my arm. The fake smile vanished from her face, replaced by a look of profound disgust. "Why don't you cover that ugly scar, Amber?" she sneered, her voice intentionally carrying across the lawn so everyone could hear. "No one wants to see that grotesque thing while they're trying to eat." Honestly, look at her. She always finds a way to try and steal the spotlight. She just loves the attention. Our brother snorted in agreement, muttering something about public decency. I froze, the familiar sting of their casual cruelty hitting me right in the chest. The entire backyard fell into a suffocating silence. The casual chatter died instantly as dozens of eyes shifted from Vanessa over to me, and then down to the jagged mark on my arm. I felt my knuckles turn white as I clenched my fists, staring hard at the concrete patio. I swallowed the rising tide of anger and humiliation, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. Vanessa stood there with her hands on her hips, her expression smug, fully expecting me to apologize or run inside to hide away in shame. Hearing the commotion, Marcus slowly turned around from the grill. He began walking over, clearly intending to diffuse the tension and keep the peace on his welcome party. "What's going on over here?" he asked, his voice calm and disciplined. Vanessa immediately leaned into him, her voice dripping with synthetic sweetness. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I was just telling Amber she needs to be more considerate. Nobody wants to look at her ruined arm while we're celebrating." But Marcus wasn't listening to her. The moment his eyes locked onto my exposed arm, his entire posture stiffened. He stopped dead in his tracks. His gaze tracked the precise, distinct pattern of the thick shrapnel tissue, and all the color drained from his face. The cold beer bottle slipped completely from his unmoving fingers, shattering loudly against the stone floor. He froze, staring at my arm as if he were looking at a ghost. "Marcus? Honey, what's wrong?" Vanessa asked, her voice faltering as she looked at her husband's pale face and the shattered glass at his feet. She stepped toward him, reaching out to touch his arm. "It's just an ugly scar. Don't let it ruin your appetite. Amber was just leaving to go change anyway." "Shut up, Vanessa," Marcus snapped, his voice hitting like a physical blow. The absolute coldness in his tone made her gasp, stepping back in shock. The entire family gasped with her, completely unaccustomed to seeing the golden child reprimanded so harshly. Marcus didn't take his eyes off me. Slowly, his shoulders squared, his chin lifted, and he snapped into a textbook, rigid military salute. He stood at absolute attention right in front of my parents' patio table. The silence in the yard was so heavy you could hear the wind rustling the trees. "Operation Iron Storm," Marcus said, his voice trembling with an intense emotional weight that vibrated through the air. "Sir, it is an absolute honor." My parents blinked in total confusion, looking between the elite Navy SEAL and their quiet, supposedly unsuccessful daughter. "Marcus, what are you doing?" my father stammered, holding a spatula in midair. "Amber wasn't a hero. She just worked a low-level desk job overseas. She shuffled papers in an office." "A desk job?" Marcus turned his sharp gaze to my father, his eyes blazing with sudden fury. "Is that what she told you? Is that what you idiots actually believed? Your daughter wasn't a clerk. She was a legendary combat search and rescue helicopter pilot for the United States Air Force. Her call sign was Black Eagle. And that scar? That scar is the only reason I am standing here alive today." Marcus turned back toward the stunned crowd, his chest heaving as he forced the memories out into the open. 4 years ago, my SEAL team was dropped deep into a hostile mountain valley during a brutal midnight ambush. The intelligence was wrong. We were outnumbered 50-1, pinned down in a crumbling stone compound, and running completely out of ammunition. Heavy anti-aircraft fire lit up the sky like a nightmare. We radioed for emergency extraction, but command denied the request. The airspace was deemed completely unsurvivable. Every single rescue unit refused to spin their rotors. They told us to hold tight and brace for the worst. It was a death sentence, and we knew it. We sat in the dark, saying our final goodbyes to our families. He looked back at me, his eyes shining with tears. But then, over the radio, we heard a lone voice, call sign Black Eagle. She told command that she wasn't leaving American soldiers behind to die. She defied direct orders, locked her target, and dropped her Pavehawk helicopter straight through a wall of heavy enemy fire. Shrapnel was ripping through the hull, tearing the instrument panel to shreds. One massive blast tore through the cockpit glass, and a jagged piece of red-hot metal sliced completely through her arm. She was bleeding out, losing consciousness, and flying a burning machine with only one working hand. But she didn't waver. She brought that bird down right into the dirt, held the perimeter line while my bleeding men scrambled aboard, and flew us out of that living hell. She saved 10 lives that night, collapsing the moment we crossed into friendly airspace. She was awarded the Silver Star in secret. The silence that followed Marcus's words was deafening. The entire backyard seemed to stand still under the heavy weight of the truth. My mother dropped her wine glass, the liquid splashing unnoticed across her expensive shoes. My father stared at me, his mouth completely open, looking at me as if he were seeing a stranger for the very first time. Vanessa's face twisted into an ugly mask of confusion and deep humiliation. She looked at the guests, then at her husband, desperately trying to salvage her shattered pride. "Marcus, please," Vanessa stammered, her voice high and erratic. "There must be some mistake. Amber? A hero? She probably just got caught in a crossfire while doing paperwork. You're making it sound way more dramatic than it actually was." Marcus spun around to face her, his eyes cold and full of absolute contempt. "There is no mistake, Vanessa. While you were spending your parents' money and complaining about your trivial problems, your sister was bleeding out in a cockpit to save my life. She has more courage in her little finger than your entire circle combined. And you have the nerve to call her scar grotesque?" He turned his back on her completely, looking at the rest of my family who were now shrinking back in shame. Vanessa stood entirely alone on the patio, her face burning bright red as the whispers began. The golden child had vanished, leaving only a cruel, small woman exposed in front of everyone. I slowly stood up from my chair, feeling the warm afternoon breeze against my face. For 22 years, I had lived under the heavy shadow of my family's low expectations, letting them believe whatever lies made them feel superior. But looking at Vanessa's tearful, humiliated face and my parents' stunned expressions, I realized I didn't feel angry anymore. I just felt completely free. I didn't need their validation, their apologies, or their praise. The true weight of my life wasn't measured by their shallow standards, but by the lives of the 10 men who were home safe with their families today because I chose to fly into the fire. "Thank you, Marcus," I said softly, giving him a quiet nod of mutual respect. I picked up my keys from the table, turned away from the silent crowd, and walked out of the backyard with my head held high, leaving them alone with the heavy truth. Now, I'm curious about all of you who listened to my story today. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have kept your past a secret from a toxic family, or would you have spoken up sooner? Have you ever had someone completely misjudge your silent strength? Comment your thoughts down below. And meanwhile, please tell me what city you are watching from so I can see how far my story has traveled. Don't forget to check out the next video on your screen. Thank you for watching until the very end.